on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. What is Wednesday? It's hump day, so middle of the week. Thanks so much for being with us. My name is Paul. You found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here. Telephone number, as always, 870-275-9799 if you want to contribute to the program. Let me go ahead and pull up my version of Facebook Live here so I can participate and read you guys' comments, because we are broadcasting over there as well, facebook.com/Conduit News. Now, for the program today, we got a good show for you coming up at... well, let's hope it works out this time. Is it our phone line or his phone line? I don't know. We're going to find out, but we've rescheduled Gregory Wrightstone, the geologist, going to talk a little climate change, scheduled to at least coming up at the bottom of this hour. Tried to have him on Monday, but we had phone problems. It was weird. But those phone problems didn't persist. We were able to use our phone lines perfectly fine for our next, the second guest that day. But anyway, speaking of the second guest today, on Monday we did talk to State Representative Nelda Speaks. We were talking about education adequacy, and I got a little feedback on that because we were talking about how the courts have, they have decided that, we've got to. Well, my question was, according to the courts, do we have to have a contract with some sort of a contractor to determine education adequacy? And apparently that's not what the courts say. The courts say the legislature must determine what is adequate, not that the legislature must use, a third party to do so. So just a little point there. And I've got a lot of feedback on that, by the way, just in terms of what kind of contractor is best. Do we want contractors to determine, if you're going to even use one, to determine education adequacy here in the state? Basically, how good is the state doing? How are they measuring up? I would personally want a contractor that is in favor of reform, in favor of things like school choice. I think that would be... meaning if you were going to contract, this is just my opinion, if you're going to go contract with somebody that was not for those things, I would be like, that's odd. Telephone number again, 870-275-9799. By the way, speaking of school choice, tomorrow on the program we will be talking to Dr. Patrick Wolf. For those of you that don't know, Dr. Patrick Wolf is one of the most underutilized, I think, resources here in the state of Arkansas when it comes to school choice, because the guy's an expert on it. He works at the University of Arkansas, a distinguished professor of education policy and 21st century endowed chair in school choice in the Department of Education Reform at the University of Arkansas's College of Education and Health Professions. So he's going to be back on the show tomorrow, 7:33, and we're talking about actually comparing Arkansas to Colorado and charter schools and everything else. All the stuff that big liberals and progressives hate. Well, honestly, we had a conversation about that. I sat down with him yesterday to do the interview, and we talked about how on the national stage, it's not as bipartisan as school choice can be a very bipartisan issue. The more local the government is. Anyway, we're going to be talking with Gregory Wrightstone today. Then we're going to introduce you to a young conservative by the name of Joseph Fondren. He'll be on the program today, coming up at 7. And then Iris Stevens. Miss Iris Stevens will be back on the program because apparently there's something going on. Like there has been a controversy with a local library in Jonesboro hosting a transgender author, but then busing high school age kids to the library to hear. And it's been a big controversy. So, we're talking to her about that because apparently the schools are no longer sending their kids over to the library. And you know what that means. I mean, that's going to drive the left insane. Anytime you point out, hey, maybe we shouldn't be spending taxpayer dollars, to promote this or that or this lifestyle or that lifestyle. Oh, by the way, and we got a lot of news to get to in the meantime of this program. But so I guess I can't really tell this story without having a little confession. I was at McDonald's yesterday, Joe. I never go to McDonald's. I really don't. I don't eat fast food often. But I had to go home yesterday as soon as the show was over because I had to prop up my garage door because I told you guys my garage door broke. Like, it was really, really strange. So I had to prop up my garage door so the missus would have been able to get her car out of the garage, because this doesn't work. So after I did that, I was like, man, I'm hungry. So I was on the way back up here to, do show prep for today's show. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go buy, I'm going to go get like a sandwich or something, a breakfast sandwich from McDonald's. So I go and get a breakfast sandwich. And I pull up to get my bag of food or bag of grease. And as I'm getting it, I grab the bag and I say, thank you, ma'am, for the bag. And then I did a double take and I looked at this woman and I realized that this was not a woman. Okay, I thought for a second this was a woman, but it wasn't. It was a man. So I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you, sir," is what I said. So at first I said, "Thank you, ma'am," and then I kind of looked. I was like, "Oh, thank you, sir." And the person was nice. It was like, "Oh, no big deal." And then this person said, "I used to be a man," and I was like, "Okay, sorry again. Bye." Because I honestly, like, I didn't know what to do. I mean, I had no idea what to do. I've never been in an experience like that. Really was my first experience. And I misgendered this person according to them because, of course, this whole idea you can define your own reality. But I had two, which you can't, by the way, but I had two thoughts, okay? I initially drove off and I felt bad because I don't want to offend anybody, okay? I really don't. But then I was like, well, hang on a second. Why do I feel bad? Because honestly, and I don't mean to go all leftist honest, but I felt kind of victimized by the whole thing. I'm just going to be honest. That's not necessarily the Christian attitude. As a matter of fact, it 100% is not the Christian attitude. I'm just telling you, like, I felt victimized by the whole situation. Because I'm like, I'm going out, how many times have I been through a drive-thru in my life? What, thousands of times? And are you going to the grocery store or whatever? And now all of a sudden there is this new social phenomenon that, I mean, I'm just not prepared for. I'm sorry. I'm not prepared for it at all. This level of awkwardness. And then I also thought, you know what? It might be the interaction might have been actually fine for this person, this man who claims that they used to be a man, and are now a woman, because the disguise fooled me for a split second, and then I caught it. Because I initially did say, thank you, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you, sir. Oh, no, it's okay, don't worry about it. I used to be a man. I'm like, okay, well, so at least we're... Anyway, whew. I had to get out of there. It was so socially awkward. I mean, I don't know if y'all have experienced this or not. And again, it's not necessarily the... It's not... I don't know. I wasn't prepared for that at all. Anyway, telephone number 870-275-9799. Certainly, there are new social variables out there when it comes to this stuff. Let's go to the debates last night real quick. I want to get in this question. Real Clear Politics. Here is Joe Biden answering a question about his son, who did an interview with ABC News. That ABC News, they didn't even fact check what Hunter Biden said, by the way. And even they even didn't, like, ABC News has even done their own reporting on some of this stuff about China and him making money in China. I wonder if there's anybody in Arkansas making money off of China. Here is this question from Anderson Cooper last night.
Inquiry is centered on President Trump's attempts to get political dirt from Ukraine on Vice President Biden and his son Hunter. Mr. Vice President, President Trump has falsely accused your son of doing something wrong while serving on a company board in Ukraine.
Interesting.
I want to point out there's no evidence of wrongdoing by either one of you.
Go to this next video that we have in the queue, like the very next one.
I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko. They would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a got fired.
Stop.
And they put in place someone who...
Okay, no evidence. I want to be clear here. Anderson Cooper and the rest of the media continues to say there's no evidence. There's clearly evidence. It's on videotape. Go back to this clip from last night, though. Let's hear the answer.
Having said that, on Sunday, you announced that if you're president, no one in your family or associated with you will be involved in any foreign businesses. My question is, if it's not okay for a president's family to be involved in foreign businesses, why was it okay for your son when you were vice president? Vice President Biden?
Look, my son did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. I carried out the policy of the United States government in rooting out corruption in Ukraine.
Interesting.
And that's what we should be focusing on. And what I wanted to make a point about, and my son's statement speaks for itself. He spoke about it today. My son's statement speaks for itself. What I think is important is we focus on why it's so important to remove this man from office.
Because he's investigating me now.
Look,
that's why.
The fact that George Washington worried on the first time he spoke after being elected president that what we had to worry about is foreign interference in our elections. It was the greatest threat to America. This president on three occasions, has invited foreign governments and heads of government to get engaged in trying to alter our elections. The fact is that it is outrageous. Rudy Giuliani, the president, and his thugs have already proven that they, in fact, are flat lying. What we have to do now is focus on Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He doesn't want me to be the candidate. He's going after me because he knows if I get the nomination, I will beat him like a drum.
Hold on, sorry, I just want to follow up. Mr. Vice President, as you said, your son Hunter today gave an interview, admitted that he made a mistake and showed poor judgment by serving on that board in Ukraine. Did you make a mistake by letting him? You were the point person on Ukraine at the time, if you can answer.
Look, my son's statement speaks for itself. I did my job. I never discussed a single thing with my son about anything having to do with Ukraine.
That's not
true.
true.
No one has indicated I have. We've always kept everything separate. Even when my son was the Attorney General of the state of Delaware, we never discussed anything. So there'd be no potential conflict.
Oh, there's definitely a potential conflict.
I'm proud of the judgment he made. I'm proud of what he had to say. And let's focus on this. The fact of the matter is that this is about Trump's corruption. That's what we should be focusing on.
Stop. It's about Trump's corruption, it's not about Biden's corruption. Man, that is an example right there, folks, of projecting the very thing you're guilty of on your opponent. He said, no, I was rooting out corruption in Ukraine. Well, now that's actually what President of Ukraine, Zelensky, and President Trump claim they're doing now. So you say that the president is corrupt and has thugs, and the president says, no, Joe Biden, you and your thugs were getting greedy, and you dug too deep in Ukraine, right? Like the dwarves of Middle Earth. Uncovering the Balrog. Hey, by the way, Joe, you forgot my tapes, didn't you? You forgot my Lord of the Rings tapes. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Well, you said you promised them. You promised them to me. Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyway, this is really frustrating to me because you have Joe Biden here lying. Okay, clearly clearly, Joe Biden and his son discussed their business deals. Matter of fact, Joe Biden's son, Hunter, admitted very briefly in that interview with ABC News that they did discuss some stuff. And so this is, and if you'll notice, the Democrats last night, I don't know if anybody watched this debate, but those of you who did, you probably noticed the other Democrats didn't actually attack Joe Biden on this issue. Now, that's for two possible reasons. John Brummett in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette today, big liberal John Brummett, he says that they didn't attack him because Trump's attacking him and they don't want to help Trump out in any way. But I actually think it's the other possibility, which is they know that Joe Biden's not going to survive this. They know that his candidacy is in decline, and there's really just no upside to piling on. They're just going to let Joe kind of fade into the sunset. A lot of people maybe think that Joe Biden ran for office to avoid prosecution in the first place because of the allegations of, well, you're the third world dictator that's investigating your political opponents. Folks, just because you're running for office, according to the Obama administration, it doesn't mean you can't be investigated by the government, because that's exactly what Barack Obama did through the entire 2016 election. He had Trump and other Republicans being investigated. And that's exactly what they did to Trump. And now, Trump makes a phone call and says, hey, by the way, Joe Biden, he's on tape, right? He's on tape. You just heard the tape. Is that okay with you guys? Now we find out that a month before the phone call between the Ukrainian president and President Trump, the Ukraine had already reopened the investigation into Hunter Biden's company. So, yeah, this is a huge deal. And Joe Biden is a total fraud. Now, and listen to this. This is what's crazy to me. RealClearPolitics.com. That is where this video is being played from, okay? So I went down to the comments because Real Clear Politics is not known for a website that's conservative. If anything, it kind of leans a little left in their headlines and their titling. But they just have clips of, things that politicians say. Okay, they're always going to cover the debate. They're always going to cover Trump rallies and everything else. Here's just a few of the comments. What corruption? You publicly announced your quid pro quo to withhold funds until the attorney who was investigating your son's shady shell company was fired. As commander-in-chief, Trump has every right to fight such corruption. Then you have another comment. Hunter was laundering emoluments. Quid pro Joe. I want to ride on Air Force Two, somebody else says. Somebody else, well, that settles it for all the fake news outlets. If Biden says he isn't corrupt, then that's the end of it for the mainstream media, right? Another comment, and Trump says he did nothing wrong. And focus on Biden. Okay, where do we go from here? I say investigate Biden since Trump is constantly being investigated. That's a really good point. Trump is constantly, we need to investigate Trump. Well, he's being investigated. He's more vetted and investigated than any president in the 21st century, for sure. It's homophobia, racist, and misogynistic to disagree with you. You get the gist here with some of these folks on this comment section. Joe, you can't be that dumb. If Hunter's last name was Smith, he wouldn't have earned a dime in the Ukraine or from China. Oh, and by the way, Hunter Biden admitted that in the interview. He said, if my last name wasn't Biden, I wouldn't have gotten that job in Ukraine. He claimed that he didn't make a dime off the China deal, which is not true. ABC News' own reporting in the past. Oh, by the way, it's like ABC News can't tell the difference now between being paid directly and getting a giant investment deal. It's like, well, I'm not really, your stock goes up. You get a giant investment, the price of your stock goes up and you're paid out that way, not necessarily indirect compensation. Anyway, we're going to dive into this a little bit more. We've got a great show for you. You don't want to go anywhere. What do you think about my transgender story, my encounter with a transgender person? That was my first encounter, isn't that? Now, a lot of people were like, in bigger cities and stuff, that's not a thing, I guess. I think it's more common. I don't know. I was just kind of taken back. I'm still kind of in shock. I told my family about it. I was like, you're not going to believe what happened to me today. There's not very many situations socially that I find awkward. I can kind of talk to pretty much anybody, and it was one of those things that just caught you off guard, Ooh, I had no idea. It's okay. I used to be a man, and I was sitting there going, okay, sorry, bye. Pretty sure this person was still a man. Anyway, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in a moment. But folks, there's been a lot of talk last week. The news last week was how the president wasn't going to cooperate with the House's what I consider bogus impeachment investigation, because they're not even allowing the Republicans to participate. There's a guy, Matt Gaetz, got kicked out of a judiciary committee, or not judiciary because he's on judiciary, but he got kicked out of one of the committees, doing the impeachment inquiry. It's not very transparent. I wanted to bring back John O'Connor to the program. He served as an assistant U.S. attorney in Northern California from 74 to 79. He's written a book, Postgate, How the Washington Post Betrayed Deep Throat, Covered Up Watergate, and Began Today's Partisan Advocacy Journalism. John O'Connor, welcome back, sir.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning to you. What are your thoughts about the news last week that the president said, hey, I'm not going to give you guys any documents because this impeachment inquiry is invalid?
Well, he's absolutely right, of course. If
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Real quick, Hunter Biden expresses regret for getting entangled in the swamp in this ABC News interview. He has gotten rich off of foreign deals because his daddy was vice president. Quote, in retrospect, look, I think that it was poor judgment on my part, is that I think that it was poor judgment because I don't believe now, when I look back on it, I know I did nothing wrong at all. However, was it poor judgment to be in the middle of something that it's a swamp in many ways? Yeah. Wow, using some of the president's own language here. Of course, he had tried to attack the president. By the way, Peter Schweitzer, who's a senior contributor at Breitbart News, said that there is no comparison, by the way, absolutely no comparison between what Joe Biden and Hunter Biden have done and the president and his children. Like, no comparison at all. And, they want to call the president, and thugs and everything else. Say what you want to, man. But Donald Trump clearly has never been and never will be a Washington, D.C. insider. Can we agree with that now? I mean, I had my doubts, but he is definitely not in with the establishment. And everything he does is trying to shift a direction that we have been headed in this country and globally for a long time, and he's trying to undo it, and they can't stand him for it. We have John Nolte. ABC fails to fact-check Hunter Biden's claim of not 1 cent from Chinese government deal. Let's see here. He's allowed to trash Trump. But here's this. Just a few months ago, ABC aired an in-depth report on Hunter's shady business dealings that included this nugget. Quote, this video shows Chinese diplomats greeting Vice President Biden as he arrives in Beijing in December of 2013. Right by his side, his son Hunter. Less than 2 weeks later, Hunter's firm had new business, creating an investment fund in China, involving the government-controlled Bank of China, with reports they hope to raise $1.5 billion. Hunter still plays a role in the fund. His lawyer says his stake is worth about $500,000. ABC just ignores that their own reporting when they interviewed Hunter Biden yesterday. But, I mean, they were also faking explosions.
If they want an impeachment inquiry, which I think would be bogus anyway, as you say, even if they did it the right way, they're clearly doing it the wrong way. When President Nixon and President Clinton were impeached, the Congress, realizing how important this political act is, reached out to make sure that they had the appearance of fairness. In this case, there's not even the slightest appearance of fairness. The Republicans, of course, have no ability to subpoena witnesses. It's not out in the open. Congressman Schiff is conducting this like a secret grand jury. Well, guess what? This is not a grand jury. But witnesses are shuttled in and out in secret. Why? Because they don't want, not only don't want their opponents to know, they don't want the American people to know. And of course, then they'll leak things selectively to the public, just to create this aura. Fact is, this is a big, a very much of a partisan act, and it's just obvious, and it divides the country once more.
I know that your book deals with, Watergate, how it was covered up. I know the CIA was certainly a part of that, and now we have, the idea that a CIA whistleblower is never going to have to reveal their identity, but might take down the president of the United States. What do you make of that?
Well, this is just more of the same. Everything, and my book really says this. It's really where it all started. But think about what happened in the last few years. During an election, everybody's trying to make a big deal about this thing with the Ukraine, about how it would be so terrible if we actually investigated someone who happened to be a candidate. Well, guess what happened 4 years ago? Our own intelligence agencies decided to investigate a candidate named Donald Trump. And it was clear. Anybody with an ounce of sense knew from the beginning that this so-called Russian collusion was nonsense. Now, maybe Brennan and the people in the agency got some kind of a tip that it might have been Russian disinformation that, Putin wants to help Trump. But after that, so that might have been legitimate. I don't know. But after that, it was clear that this was an intelligence agency entrapment. These people are being sent in to try to entrap Papadopoulos. They're doing that over in England because the CIA can conduct operations over there. But this whole thing was an illicit attempt by.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So look at these headlines here. This is ridiculous. I told you about this on Monday. This headline: Vatican now considering recognition of ecological sins. That's nice. Then we have this from over across the pond. Hundreds of arrests as London climate change activists vow more protest. Then we have scientists endorsing mass civil disobedience to force climate action. This is a piece from Reuters. I want to bring in, we've got geologist. His name is Gregory Wrightstone. He's been on the program before. We love to have him on. He's the author of Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know. He's got more than 35 years of experience researching and studying various aspects of Earth's processes. Gregory Wrightstone, how are you, sir?
Boy, after that introduction, you make me sound awfully smart. But there's a lot of climate lunacy going on out there. You're right about that.
Yeah, there really is. And by the way, I want to say I apologize for our technical problems. I know we were supposed to have you on Monday, and we couldn't get the phone situation worked out, but I'm glad things are working out a little better for us this morning. The climate lunacy, it never ends. And now, I'm kind of glad that the Vatican is considering adding ecological sins to the discussion, because I've kind of looked at the left, in this obsession with man-made climate change to the degree they're claiming. It kind of is like a devotion to religion in a lot of ways, and so I kind of feel like the two go hand in hand in a way. I disagree with it, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, that harkens back to the time of the Reformation. We had the Catholic Church back then. You had to pay, what was it called? We had to pay for your sins.
Indulgences.
Indulgences, and we've got the modern indulgence that they're endorsing is our carbon offsets. So we're paying for, now get this, our sins of emission. So, which are carbon dioxide in their carbon footprint. And yeah, the Pope's just got it. And I've written several times about the Pope, not to pick on Catholics or the Pope, but the Pope's the biggest of the religious leaders that are out there touting things that are just absolutely go contrary to what if your leader, your listeners that are Christians, we should be pulling up the poor and the helpless, and what his policies will do is just beat down the poorest among us and destine generations or billions of people into generational poverty. Because the best way to lift people up out of poverty is through reliable, affordable energy, like they're doing in India, building coal-fired plants, going for complete electrification of the nation of India.
Yeah.
There are 4 million people, mostly women, around the world that die just because they're cooking over wood and dung in their homes.
Yeah.
4 million people die unnecessary deaths every year. Millions of children with pneumonia. In fact, I'm looking at a picture here of a 35-year-old woman from Nepal that had just gotten out of cataract surgery. That's something you've probably never heard of about this, but again, these people are cooking over open wood and dung, leading to early cataracts. They're having these women having cataracts in their 30s and early 40s, and these are just very, very preventable deaths and illnesses that we could prevent by providing electricity, propane, compressed natural gas, a lot of different things that could be used other than this, and that's just one example of how providing fossil fuel-powered energy can help and lift people up out of poverty. Yeah. And again, that's India's just a shining example. They're building coal-fired plant after coal-fired plant, and he's doing it. Prime Minister Modi, I'm talking about, is doing it to lift his people up out of poverty. And we've got and again, the Pope is just the biggest example. And I'm a contributing writer for the Cornwall Alliance for the Stewardship of Creation, which is a Christian group. So okay. I'm a Christian, but I believe completely opposite of what the Pope does. I believe, and we believe, that we can use all of our resources for the betterment of mankind and do it as good stewards.
Yes.
And you'd be surprised how many people would be opposed to that. They don't want to do that. They don't want to lift people up out of poverty. They want to keep them destined, like I said before, into generational poverty. And
and
also, frustrating.
You know what I would like the Pope to do. I mean, maybe he believes in the left's version of man-made climate change to the degree that they say it's going to happen. But you know, we also have the Bible. You know, I've got nieces who are going through school right now out of state, and the teachers are just hammering climate change. They're scaring these kids to death, talking about the same thing that I heard when I was growing up, which was, if the polar ice caps melt, the Earth is going to flood. Well, hey, guess what? If you're a Christian, the Bible says that the rainbow is a symbol, not for the LGBT community, but it's a symbol. It's a promise.
Several times before, I'm a huge, huge proponent of the many benefits we're seeing of rising temperature and increasing CO2.
Yes,
and it's not even close. In fact, I just participated. Got in late last night from. I'm calling you from Pittsburgh. I participated in a large geological convention yesterday. I was one of the featured speakers. And then we had the gentleman before me was, I guess you call him an alarmist. His talk was on the rock-solid evidence of man-made warming. And then I got up. My title was he's wrong and I'm right. And so it was pretty interesting. We had a debate. But he says we're going into a crisis, and I was saying no, we're not. And so what he does is he was using models to predict what might happen 30, 50, or 80 years in the future, and I looked at what was actually happening. He's predicting crisis and doom and despair. I'm looking at what's actually happening, and I'm seeing an Earth and humanity that are thriving. Let's look in our rearview mirror of history. In the last 100 years, you pick a metric, and I'll show you it's improving. We're just getting better and better and better, decade by decade, year by year. The many things that we hear that are fires are increasing and it's awful. And no, they're not. the science, the facts, and the data, when we look at things like hurricanes, tornadoes, fires, droughts, they're in decline. Extreme weather-related deaths are declining by a lot. All these things that they say are going to get worse are getting better. And so I'd rather rely on factual results of what's actually going on instead of saying, well, we think this is going to happen by the year 2100.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, no, it's not.
We had Bernie Sanders a month or so ago say women need to have more access to abortions to help fight climate change. And then you had a stunt done or performed at an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez rally. It was from a pro-Trump group. It was a really good performance where a woman stood up and said, we need to start eating the babies because we don't have enough time. And she was not laughed out of the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did you see that? What was your reaction?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, it wasn't a pro-Trump person. She was Lyndon LaRouche, which is definitely not pro-Trump.
Oh, okay.
She's an oddball. She's bat poop crazy, but as is he and his followers. And so, no, it was a Lyndon LaRouche follower. But
yeah,
there was
for that
that's just an
correction.
example.
I had read that somewhere. Thank you for that correction.
Yeah. So it was. I mean, if it was a Trump supporter, I thought it was done really well. I'd take credit for that. That was brilliant, just to showcase how crazy these people are. That you can say the dumbest, most outrageous things, and people go, well, maybe we should start eating babies. No, we shouldn't. The thing that there's a new group. You had referenced some of this in the lead up to my intro. They're spreading fake blood in London on Wall Street. It's a group by the name of Extinction Rebellion. Mm-hmm. You may not have heard about them yet, but you're going to. They're coming to a city near you. Their goal is to take down all Western civilizations and replace it with their vision of a utopian system. Their founder is Julian Roger Hallam. He's a failed organic carrot farmer. But he says the name of the game, you've got to bring down all the regimes in the world, ideally simultaneously, and then replace them. And he says clearly, and this is the thing that I don't think a lot of people well, I'm sure you understand it. We've talked before. I know you do. But he says this isn't about climate change. He said what this is, Extinction Rebellion isn't about the climate. It's not even about climate justice. It's a call to the Extinction Rebellion community to say we're a climate movement, because we're not. We are a rebellion. This is what it's about. And I participated here in Pittsburgh I went to the climate strike rally a couple of weeks ago, the students, and with the film crew, actually, I was on with Fox News that evening with some of our interviews that we did, and it was really amazing. The most common sign that we saw there was system change, not climate change. And what's that mean? System change. They want to bring down our government.
Yes.
One of the big focus I saw at that rally was an anti-capitalist, pro-socialist, pro-Marxist, and they didn't say it, but I would say pro-fascist movement that they want to bring us down and replace it with their Marxist utopian form of government. And no, thank you. No, I don't want that. No, thank you.
Yeah, I don't want that either. We're talking with Gregory Wrightstone. He's geologist, author of Inconvenient Facts. There's an app you can get called Inconvenient Facts. It's on your phone, and if you're ever in a conversation, and that's what it's designed for, right, Gregory? It's designed if you're having a conversation with one of these people who've been kind of brainwashed on this subject, you can open up that app and just share some truth with them, right?
Yeah. And I didn't really set out to write a book. I set out to seek the truth. And then I just got swept up into this, and I'm on a mission now. I feel sometimes like an old-time evangelist spreading the good news of the gospel of increasing CO2 and benefiting Earth. And what we see here is, and I wrote the book to empower people and disseminate information, and the app does it. Would you believe that this book, just 2 days ago, was the #1 bestseller on Amazon in 6 categories? Unbelievable. And it's a lot of word of mouth of people getting it and say, wow, and telling their friends. Again, I was at this convention. I had 4 different people come up and tell me, oh, I've bought, 10, 20, 30 books. I had another fellow that he just bought another 10 from me because he keeps it in the boardroom of his office. And anybody that comes in, he hands them out to them. Mm-hmm. And so the book is Inconvenient Facts. And if you want to get more of this information, too, my website's inconvenientfacts.xyz. You get a lot of good information. Read about the Amazon fires, the fires in California. The data there that I show is just amazing, showing that the number of fires in California have actually declined by 50% in the last 30 years. Who knew?
Yeah.
Completely opposite of what we're being told.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, this whole movement is about an attempt, like you said, to remake society and to control us. And I have become a lot more concerned than I was previously, because now we have our children who are buying into this at a really young age. And all across the world, you have kids, and I've seen the videos, who are legitimately scared that they're not going to be able to live their lives.
Yeah.
And we got to do something about this, because they do not need to be growing up in that kind of environment of fear and really just straight up brainwashed. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, and as I was packing up yesterday from my booth, there was a woman came up to me. She was a 6th grade teacher, and we talked, and she says, I love what you have to say. And I said, well, she's talking about getting out of education because of just what you're talking about. So I gave her 4 books. Here's 4 books. Take it back. And she was, really? And I gave her 4 books. I said, give them to your students, pass it out. Let them learn the facts. And so
that's awesome.
We've got to do that.
Yeah.
So thank you. It's people like you, Paul, that are helping spread the message. I'm actually very optimistic, looking forward because as I travel around the country, I find that people are very, very skeptical of this catastrophic man-made warming.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Gregory Wrightstone, everybody. We appreciate it, sir. We'll talk to you again soon. We'll make a YouTube video of this, put it up on the YouTube channel, Conduit News. And I got to tell you, listen, I was in a conversation the other day. I was talking with one of my sisters, and they were just saying, that a lot of the friends that they're that my nieces have, they're increasingly concerned, and of course in their household they know the truth. They know the truth that this is not what's being sold to the public, but yet you have children and even their parents, that are kind of buying in. I mean, the chances are if your parents are big man-made, catastrophic climate change people, then your kids are going to be as well, and vice versa. But what I thought was really disturbing is that even in some of these kids are even in their local churches and their youth groups, and I just thought to myself, it's that to me is easily correctable. There should be extremely correctable. If you have all these people running around being afraid, God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. This idea, that the earth's going to flood again, is and certainly in the level of the biblical context. You can take promise in that. You can take heart in that promise and what the rainbow actually means. So anyway, something to think about. We're going to reset here. Coming up, we're going to be talking with Joseph Fondren at the top of the next hour. He's a young conservative I want to introduce you to. Then we'll be talking with Iris Stevens. Iris talking a little bit about this transgender author that's been contracted to come to the Jonesboro Public Library and give a talk to high schoolers. We'll tell you more about that coming up next hour as well. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
The intelligence agencies to bring down a candidate. And this is more of the same. They don't want to identify this guy, one of the whistleblowers from the CIA, because it's going to be a Brennan acolyte. It's just going to be more of the same. Watergate was about intelligence agency abuse. This is too. And this is, they're essentially unregulated. regulated. And, of course, our media, this is my real problem. When something like this happens, our media does not step up and tell the people what's true. There's more falsity. Like when you hear and you see the media say that there's absolutely no evidence that either Biden did anything wrong.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That's so frustrating to me. Continue.
Yeah. First of all, who are the media to give us those conclusions? We're the citizens of the United States. Give us some facts and let us draw those conclusions.
Exactly. I mean, he's on tape. He's on tape saying he did. That's the evidence. I don't understand. I mean, I've heard that from. I drive into work early, so I mean, I'm listening to radio, I'm listening to mainstream news, and it's nonstop. The Trump campaign, Giuliani keeps saying, but there's no evidence to support it. I'm like, Joe Biden is on tape describing the crime, you know?
You've got a quid and you've got a quo. Now, was there a quid pro quo? Just as the former prosecutor, we call that evidence. It's circumstantial evidence. If I went out and paid a judge's daughter $1 million, the judge who was handling my case, gosh, somebody might think, and then the judge ended up ruling for me, somebody might think that's evidence for quid pro quo. Especially the judge's daughter.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, I messed up on the Eat the Babies thing. It is from Lyndon LaRouche, this cult leader. So yeah, my apologies for saying it was a pro-Trump organization. I fell victim to the messaging of the mainstream media. Read something, I assumed it was true, and wouldn't you know, I failed in my my filter, my normal fake news mainstream media filter failed. I've got an article here that is very interesting. So the governor wants $1 million. Governor Asa Hutchinson wants $1 million transferred from the rainy day fund to go to the Buffalo River watershed. The governor's rainy day funds aimed at Buffalo River area. This is from Michael Wickline. So yesterday, a committee of lawmakers did not make a recommendation to the Legislative Council on a request by Governor Asa Hutchinson to transfer $1 million to the State Department of Agriculture. They skipped it, rather. They did this because it was the idea of Senator Terry Rice of Waldron. The council's Performance, Evaluation, and Expenditure Review Committee forwarded the Republican governor's request to the Legislative Council without suggesting that the council approve or reject the transfer of the so-called rainy day funds. This was, from what I can tell, a way to get more legislators there to discuss and have a little bit more oversight over where this money's going. And that's what it says right here. Quote, this way there will be more lawmakers on hand for further discussion during Friday's Legislative Council meeting because the Legislative Council has more members, Rice said before the committee approved his motion in a voice vote. This all goes back to a letter October the 1st to the Legislative Council's co-chairman, which I believe... let's see here. Hutchinson said that the rainy day funds will be used to support grants and projects within the Buffalo River watershed, including but not limited to the following: voluntary best management practices for farmers and landowners, improvements to wastewater and septic systems for cities and counties within the watershed, and reduction of sediment runoff from unpaved roads within the watershed. Now, this is all really weird. Well, I would say this is all kind of surrounding C&H Hog Farms and the fact that C&H Hog Farms did everything the government told them to do, and you got these George Soros-funded groups who threw a fit, and now, yada, 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 the state is going to pay C&H Hog Farms millions of dollars, to basically pack up shop and quit. So the newly formed Buffalo River Conservation Committee and its subcommittees will now identify projects and distribute funds with the aim of improving water quality and promoting conservation practices. That's what the governor wrote to the co-chairman of that committee, Senator Cecile Bledsoe, and State Representative Jeff Wardlaw. The Nature Conservancy and the Buffalo River Foundation also have collectively pledged $1 million towards the Buffalo River Conservation Committee. Hutchinson's creation of the Conservation Committee last month is the latest endeavor from his office regarding the Buffalo River, which has been the subject of heated political debate, Wickline writes. During Tuesday's meeting, Rice referred to the governor's letter and said that because of what happened in the C&H Hog Farm case, quote, this is from the committee, we have a lot of young people, young ag people, meaning people who are trying to make a life for themselves and their family in the agricultural community in Arkansas, which, by the way, that used to just kind of be a given here in Arkansas, that if you wanted to go into agriculture, get out there and be somebody. Maybe it's a little harder than it used to be. We have a lot of young ag people that are concerned about their future, that they may become litigants in their livelihoods simply doing what they know as the best practices, end quote. Again, that's Senator Terry Rice saying we need to have a little bit more debate about this because we've got some folks worried about it. Meaning, if you want, is all this conservation effort, what does that really mean? Well, I mean, it's got to mean regulations, right? That's what it's got to mean. We're talking about more rules and regulations. In the C&H Hog Farm case, quote, this legislature agreed to, and I supported, a buyout of a private business that had no violations, Terry Rice said. Senator Rice, that technically, quote, that technically had not done anything wrong, he said. And doing that has raised concerns with a lot of people. Meaning, the government essentially said, you hadn't done anything wrong, legally everything's good, but we want you out of here, and now the state, and now we're going to be paying, we're paying C&H Hog Farm to move, to ship out.
Broadcasting from the Baker Implement Studios. Baker Implement, serving you with 11 convenient locations. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro.
Burisma announces they're going to hire Hunter Biden. Isn't that amazing? And now, the London court now is waiting. All they're waiting for is some papers from Ukraine in order to complete the seizure. They impounded it, but they didn't give it back to Ukraine. They're just holding it. Okay. Ukraine never submitted the papers to the court that would allow the court to say, okay, here's the $23 million back, Ukraine. You want it? Why wouldn't Ukraine simply put up a doc. They could say anything they wanted, get the $23 million back. No, they didn't do it. That's the first quid pro quo. And, of course, there are others. And people, so it just drives me nuts. I've got the USA Today article from yesterday. I've got the Times article from the weekend. They're all basically covering up, and they are quoting people who are really in bed with the. This is so funny. They're in bed with the previous Russian regime there, and all these so-called anti-corruption people. George Soros' anti-corruption outfit is one of the ones that's there. James Comey put in his agent into one of the anti-corruption organizations. So guess what's happening there? And guess what has happened there? And it's real corruption, and yet all we get as citizens is, there's absolutely no evidence that the Bidens did anything wrong. Now, if you're a regular, elite person that thinks he or she is educated, you're in the coastal cities, you're going to read that and you're going to say, once again, Trump is a terrible person. This is a phony investigation. My God. It's in the American interest to work on Ukrainian corruption. I mean, Eric Holder and Joe Biden had press conferences saying that back in 2014. Now it's no longer when President Trump tries to do something about it, all of a sudden it's wrong. So this is an example, and I don't know that I need to preach to you about how our media is not giving us the facts and letting the democracy decide. And it's really, and luckily there are enough people out there that just don't buy it. What bothers me is there are a lot of people who do.
We're talking again with John O'Connor, his book, Postgate, How the Washington Post Betrayed Deep Throat, Covered Up Watergate, and Began Today's Partisan Advocacy Journalism. Now, let me be honest, John, I am of the opinion at this point, I am definitely, this is a talk radio program. We talk about things that are, from the conservative side. I am a conservative. At this point, me admitting that's where you're going to hear that perspective. I think that's the new objectivism, because I'm at least being honest with you. But advocacy journalism at this point is really on full display. So I'm really glad that I had you on today. Yesterday, James O'Keefe's videos about CNN came out. And so that's clearly, they're not objective. They're cloaking themselves in objectivity, but it's fake. But then you had, I don't know if you saw this, the ABC report about the bombing of a Syrian border town where they used footage, cropped the video, and it was actually from Knob Creek in West Point, Kentucky, from 2017, where they were, doing basically a gun show, an artillery show, and they tried to use that to attack the president. I mean, and that's not an oversight. That's not an accident. That was deliberate.
Well, yes, what bothers me about the CNN stuff coming out is the notion that the CNN is trying to appear objective. It's false objectivity. It's one thing if you're a conservative and you're going to say, okay, I'm a conservative, here's my conservative opinion. There's nothing wrong with that because, number one, it's opinion and you're calling it opinion. And number two, you're telling people who you are. But that's not what happens in these mainstream media outlets. They pose as people who are objective. They pose as if they're just giving you the facts. So, we're just giving you the facts. It's proven that Biden did nothing wrong in Ukraine. That's just one example. But it's proven, and they present that to you as proven objective fact, and it is not. And that's where the real problem lay. And if these outlets put out the facts, and then when there's an opinion piece, they come out with their progressive opinions, fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's not what's happening, and that's where I think our democracy is being torn apart. It's really disguised, and what they're doing is they're getting everybody worked up. Here's my analogy, Joe.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
This morning, we have a young conservative segment, or a conservative future segment. We like to interview young folks who are kind of up-and-comers. And so for this segment, I want to introduce you to Mr. Joseph Fondren. He is in studio with us. Joseph, how are you?
It's doing good, Paul. How about you?
I'm doing well. What can you tell us a little bit about, first of all, you are the secretary of the Mississippi County Republicans, is that right?
Yes, sir, that is correct, along with many titles that I have, but that's
like what else? What other titles?
Let's see here. Back home, I'm a ASU student currently here at ASU taking classes, major in history and minor in political science. But back home, I write for the sports for our paper back home in the NEA Town Courier. And then I'm also on Lions Club.
And that's in Blytheville or Osceola?
That's in Blytheville, yes,
okay,
sir.
In Blytheville.
And, I do a bunch of those things. Then I'm also in Lions Club, which I've actually had to miss a bunch of meetings lately because of the school schedule. So
yeah.
And then on top of that, I'm also, while I'm here at college, I'm part of the ASU College Republicans and Turning Point USA here. So
okay, yeah. So tell us about Turning Point USA. What a great organization. How'd you get involved with them?
I really haven't got involved. It's just kind of, we're in a group chat and just kind of throwing out ideas and stuff about what we can do on campus. Like I said, it's kind of new. I just started in this semester as going to ASU, so it's kind of, we hadn't done a whole lot yet, besides kind of game plan for possibly going to a trip to see in West Palm Beach. I believe it's at Trump's Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
That's in December. And
wow. So
we're planning on it. It's relatively cheap, and people are just going to carpool. And I think Sarah Sanders is supposed to be there along with some others. I don't know the full lineup. It changes daily, but so
yeah. And there was so you're what year are you at Arkansas State?
I'm technically a junior at ASU, but I have already graduated with my associates at A&C, which is our community college back home.
Okay. Well, that's fantastic. So there was a Turning Point USA chapter. I believe, was it Ashlyn Hoggard that was trying to there was a freedom of speech lawsuit. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I've read that in the paper at the Jonesboro Sun a few months ago, but like I said, I just kind of joined the program lately, so it's not really something I know every little detail about, but I did kind of read the article and whatnot, and I mean, it sounds like it was a freedom of speech thing on campus. And
well, then you had the state legislature. I know it was a big issue of State Representative Dan Sullivan to try to, Little Rock kind of gave, or the General Assembly gave publicly funded universities little direction, I think, about the First Amendment and freedom of speech zones.
It's kind of one of those up in the air things. I think that we are protected by our freedom of speech, First Amendment, but I mean, it's a college campus.
Tell that to LeBron James.
Yeah, it's the college campus, I mean, it's one of those things, you can speak whatever you want to speak, but in this day's world, you're gonna offend someone for even saying hello, or not saying hello. So it's one of those things. It's sad that this world's coming to.
Yeah. Well, we're talking with Joseph Fondren. Joseph, again, he's a junior at Arkansas State. He's very involved, in the Lions Club back home. He writes for the sports for the paper, as well as the secretary for the Mississippi County Republican Committee, or Public County Committee. And I guess what I want to know from you, Joseph, is why Republicanism? Why conservatism?
I'm a type of person I don't like really being told what to do or stuff like that. So I'm more of a in-between on some issues. But then at the same time, I was rooted in church. I've always went to church. There's just some things that on the left side of politics that I just completely don't agree with at all. Pro-life, for example, marijuana use. I mean, I am a teenager, so some people kind of look at that as like, oh, well, you should be for it. And I'm one of those people, I was like, not really. I mean, I guess if you want to do it, go for it. But at the same time, I want you to have good products coming out of our steel mills, or good product, just good work ethics. And I just don't see where people can do that if you're out smoking weed every day.
Yeah.
I just don't see it happening. Plus,
it certainly has taken sucked productive mentality from a lot of people. Let's just say that.
And not only that, I mean, if you look at the reports coming out of Colorado and stuff like that, I mean, I don't want to. I hear I'm from the country, so I smell enough of cow manures and skunks or whatever animal may be around, but I don't want to just walk into a city one day. Like, I hated enough walking into someone's house that I know smokes it, much less having to sit there in the city all day long, having to smell it, and I'm just like, ugh. So, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so you would say you're raised a conservative,
exactly.
And that's what a lot of people say.
My dad works at the steel mills back home in Nucor, and then my mom works at the cafeteria at the school while also having another job. So there's some things that you can say I was definitely raised a Republican, but at the same time it was kind of, we're not we try to stay out of politics, don't make anyone mad or whatnot. And so it's definitely a game sometimes, especially when I talk to my grandparents who was kind of raised during the post-war, FDR era.
Yeah.
So my family, I would say, has a lot of Blue Dog Democrats to an extent, but at the same time, they're more Trump fans now. So it was like they were raised in that Reaganism type.
Why do you think they're Trump fans?
Well, I know why my dad's a Trump fan. Now, everyone else, they just kind of, they didn't like Hillary, I'll put it that way. And then, see, like me personally, I kind of like I like JFK, and I like some of the older presidents, but I think as a president, you have to be more moderate. You can't be so far left or so far right. And so those are some things that I kind of like, because you're not going to sit there and get anything done. And that's why I'm one of those people that's more in the middle or not far middle or anything, but more in the middle.
I like far middle. That's a good one.
So I'm not more far in the middle, but I'm more moderate conservative, because you got to be able to work with both sides. You're not going to get stuff done if you want to sit there and try to pass pro right stuff. You're not going to get stuff done if you want to do pro left stuff, even though Nancy Pelosi thinks that she can do that right now. But I mean, that's just how you got to do things. Is you got to be able to work with both sides. A good friend, I don't know about yours.
You think the left wants to work with those of us on the right, though?
Very few. I think 10%, 20% of them maybe, but the rest of them, not a day. And I don't want I'll get bad. My grandma will get on to me if she ever heard this, but I don't think there's a lot of them that do. I mean, you can look at it. There's sometimes that you can see they want to be semi-respectful if they even know what respect is, and then there's other times I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, stop! You can't do that.
Yeah. Well, I think here, even in Arkansas, the fight. I mean, I think for the most part, people think that the Democrat Party here is irrelevant. So now it's more of a battle with a super, Republican or majority is okay. Well, are there a lot of Democrats that they couldn't get on board with the social issues anymore? They switch parties, and so now within the Republican Party, it's like, okay, we've got conservatives and moderates kind of warring it out. And the problem is those moderates, the Democrats are willing to go along with those Republican moderates a lot of times.
And that goes both ways. One way it goes is the good side is well, we're getting stuff done. Sometimes it may not be as pro-right as we'd all like it to be, but at the same time, we're getting some things done that help some people. Now, on the other end of that, though, is things that I absolutely despise and hate is the rhinos, or not necessarily the rhinos, but the people that are, how do I put it? Like they just put the R beside their name so they can get reelected. Don't sit there and be a Republican if you're not a Republican. Don't be a Democrat if you're not a Democrat.
Well, see, that's you described yourself earlier as kind of a guy in the middle. That's not a middle position. That's a conservative position.
And I know. And like I said, there are some things that are definitely far on my end, and then there's something like the other day my buddy was describing me. He's like, Fondren's probably a centrist too. Like, he's not far left, but he's not far right. But then again, though, he's not in the middle of right either. And so I'm one of those people. I'm just like, that's how I was raised. Like, if you treat people good, and you get good.
I think a lot of Americans, I think a lot of people are drawn to the Republican Party because on the major issues it's here, and then maybe and some of the others, well, maybe it's a case by case basis. Now that's not how I am, but that I can, it does tend to be how a lot of people end up being, and that's why independents, make up 30% of the
Exactly.
electorate.
Well, and I don't know how much or how well you've talked to Senator Bozeman, but
I have talked to him. Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Exactly. And there's something that has stood out to me one time. I was interviewing him for a thing for the paper, and I've done it several times. But I asked him, I was like, I'm a young conservative person. Besides doing the paper, I do a lot of things. And just what are some things that you would have to say to those people who want to get involved in politics, but the only thing they hear is negative, negative, negative? And he said, you know what? There's one thing that you have to always remember. There's going to be people that you agree with 80% of the time. And then there's some things that the people you don't agree with at all, you're going to at least agree with them at least 20 to 40, a very low percentage, but enough to get something done. And that's when you got to get stuff done. And that's whenever you got to be able to work with those people, know those people, and just, try to do what's best for the country on that 20 to 30% that you wouldn't always agree on.
Yeah. We're talking with Joseph Fondren. Joseph, again, Secretary of the Mississippi County Republican Committee. I got to attend, y'all's meeting recently and present.
Yes,
and I know you were there. But I know that was when you guys had kind of realized that the late great Dorothy Crockett was kind of at the end of her life.
Right.
And I know she meant a lot to the committee. Can you just kind of address a little bit what did Dorothy Crockett mean to the Mississippi County Republicans and Republicans across the state?
Well, I'll start a little bit about what she meant to me. In 2016, I graduated high school. Into 2016-17 era, I kind of got involved. I knew one or two people through the paper, and they were like, "Oh, well, you're a Republican. You should join our party." Blah blah blah. So I was like, "Okay, I'll come join." And I did. One of the first people I ever met was Dorothy. Now, me and Dorothy didn't always see eye to eye on some things, but we sit there and we always talk, or she was always helpful to come. For a part there, she was the secretary, because I think our secretary before her anyways, had passed or moved out of the committee, or wasn't active for something, I can't remember. And so she was like, "Oh, well, don't worry, very encouraging, like, you got this, no one wants it, I'll be here to help you along the way if you need help on the rules or whatnot," which I'm sure she was on the rules committee.
Oh, yeah.
Every committee there probably was. She was basically on it somehow, some way. And so she was very helpful to me getting started I was only 18 at the time. And so for someone at her age to help out an 18-year-old, I mean, that just meant the world to me. Now, obviously, Kylie has helped now and was helping then too. But now to answer your full question, what she meant to Mississippi County Republicans and just Republicans as a whole. Well, you went to one of our Lincoln Day dinners 2 years ago, whatever year Jan was there speaking. And just hearing reports that, like, at one point in time, all the people could have met in one room or, like, in one bathroom, 5 people or so. And to see that meeting, I think we had over 200, right at 200, 300. I mean, that's just a testament to Dorothy and several others. But, I mean, Dorothy was the main one who basically paved the way for all that. I was looking in a book last night the RPA gives out or whatnot, and Skip Kelly had a few, and just seeing Dorothy's name as the chairman on there, I mean, it doesn't seem real, because in my lifetime or since I've been around, it's only been Kylie. And just to see all the different jobs that she was doing just in Mississippi County, and that's not counting what she was doing with her family. I mean, she has a large family. I met a lot of them at her visitation, but she has a large family. But it was always her second family. Was you couldn't go to a Republican meeting anywhere in the state without meeting 20 more people that she had already met or knew. And then on the Republican as a state or in the nation, I did an article after her death. I mean, that's something I would want to be known for, is whenever the senators of the state are sitting there putting tweets out about you, about how much you meant to their life.
Yeah.
I mean, to have the governor and his wife, well, the governor wasn't there, but to have the governor's wife and just people from all over the state send flowers or be at the funeral or the visitational area. I mean, that just shows a testament to how much she was loved, known, and even if you didn't agree with her or didn't always like everything that she did, maybe because she was too far right for some people, they were still there to show the respects and know that she'd done a lot for this state on several races. I mean, even people that wasn't in Mississippi County, I saw post a picture from some race they did in the early 2010s. I mean, I'm just like, Dorothy don't even live like 200 miles from you, and she's out there campaigning for you. So, I mean, she was just a hard worker, and if she said she was going to do something, well, by God, it was getting done.
Yeah.
And, even to her last day, I mean, she's sitting there planning Lincoln Day dinners.
Wanted to be a delegate
right.
and go to the Republican National Convention.
And said she was going to vote for Trump and be at the inauguration again. I mean, not very many people can say that they've been to 3 inaugurations.
Yeah.
Or not 3 inaugurations, 3 national conventions and stuff. So, I mean, hard worker. And, she had a family behind her who just, if they couldn't make it, they made a way for her to get there.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, even to her last day, Skip is a good friend of yours. And
Skip Kelly.
Yes, sir. Skip Kelly. And, he was kind of upset at the funeral because he's always driven her everywhere. And the last day, he didn't get to drive her to her final resting place. He was like, oh, come on now. You know that I should have been able to drive her. I drove her everywhere else across the state.
That's great.
So, she's one of those people that you may not always liked what she liked, but you respected her for it.
I know you keep saying that, but I would just say, I think a lot of people agreed with Dorothy's politics because it was platform. It was Republican Party platform. And that's the thing about I guess that's the thing about why conservatives are getting to a place here in Arkansas specifically where it's like, okay, it's time to get some of these big, we've got to stop the spending. We've got to stop, raising taxes. And it's because of people like Dorothy. And let me explain. What I mean by that, Joseph, is she was there at Mississippi County when nobody was there. You had 5 people in a bathroom. You said it, and then you go to 200 people. And then she's knocking doors for people that don't even live in her district.
Right.
She's doing all this. She was doing all that to convince people that the Democrat Party, which is the party of higher taxes, which is the party of spending more and more money, and now it's the party of a whole lot of other stuff that everybody disagrees with. That's why she did it. She didn't do it to elect Republicans so that we could just kind of barely move the needle, and she did it to change the state, to change the culture, and that, in my opinion, it garners respect. And I think we need to push even harder when we have a chance. In honor of Dorothy, to actually let's implement even more of that platform, and let's not deviate from it because that's what we're promising voters.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Paul. It's just the thing that I think we all need to remember too is if we look, I don't know the exact years. It was before I was born, so we'll say over 20 years ago. Well, even before then, because Huckabee was president or was governor in '96, I believe. So, I mean, if you look, '92, Bill Clinton was in office here, or '91.
Man, that is nuts to think about.
And so, I was in that book I was looking at earlier. I mean, only 2 Republicans ever beat Bill Clinton here in the state.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you got to think. I mean, there's even parts in the 1st District that we live in that are still heavily Democrat. Yeah. Now, they've changed a little bit the last 5-10 years or so, but they are still Democrat, far Democrat. Yeah. And so that's one thing that we need to work on is trying to get those Republicans. But even we got to realize in the back of our heads that they may be Republicans, but at the same time, if anything, they're still blue dog. They're not Republicans.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's very smart of you to bring up Bill Clinton.
Right.
I haven't brought that. I mean, but I've said that before. We're in the state that launched him to be arguably the most powerful political family in the world. Maybe
Definitely.
Not now, but you know what I mean? That came in our own backyard.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of bureaucracies that haven't been reformed since the 90s. Mm-hmm. There's, a lot of the same people probably still around. And so,
definitely a lot of the same people are still around. I mean, in Lions Club, every year we do this kind of new members get to know who have you met or whatnot, and someone put on their Bill Clinton. They're like, well, heck, you're born in Arkansas. You should have known Bill Clinton. And I'm like, well, you're kind of lucky. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I may not agree with him on everything, but it'd be nice to meet a president. I mean, it's just the respect for the office, which is something I think that a lot of people, we were talking about it earlier, have left. They've just lost it.
Joseph, we got to wrap things up. What's your major again? Did you tell us what you're majoring in as a junior at Arkansas State?
I think I did. If not, I'm majoring in history.
Okay, wow,
with a minor in political science.
Okay.
I don't know if they actually have a course. I haven't really researched it yet. But if I had a choice to go like in-depth majoring, it would be in the U.S. presidents. So that's kind of what I study. I have a lot of biographies at my house from all the presidents.
Joseph Fondren, it's great to talk to you. Appreciate your conservative point of view.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
All right,
Thank you for having me.
Folks, we're going to take a break. We'll be back here in just a moment.
If I go to court every day, and there are 1 or 5 or 4 other lawyers that are there to call me on every misstatement I make, or if I make an omission, they let me know. There's a judge that doesn't let me state as fact that which is opinion. I have to put on an expert with opinion, but I can't, with a regular witness, come up with opinions. I'm hemmed in that way. But if I were able to go into court alone with no judge and just a jury, and I could do what the media does, the temptation is to just tell one side of things. And that's what we've got now. That's what we've got since 1972, since Watergate. We've got a media that says, gee, I'm going to go in and talk to the jury without anybody correcting me. And I know that none of my mainstream cohorts are going to correct me. And this is what happens. And that jury's getting inflamed. It's getting excited. It's really inciting mob rule.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Wasn't that a good interview? It was a good discussion with Mr. Fondren there. I had fun talking with him and getting his perspective and his point of view on really just the issues of the day. Again, if you like that, there'll be a YouTube video up on that. We'll post it over at conduitnews.com as well as the YouTube page. And if you do one thing, if you want to do one thing to help us, support us, continue to bring you the news, please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And after you hit the subscribe button, YouTube does this thing. They make it harder on folks. If you want to actually get notified, and not just kind of come up occasionally in your YouTube feed, you want to click the little bell to receive notifications after you click the subscribe button. And you can, you can decide if you want all notification. When I subscribe to somebody on YouTube, I typically have watched a few of their videos, and I'm like, okay, I do want to know when this person has a new video out or new anything out. So feel free to do that. We're just telling you about this issue with C&H Hog Farm. Here it is. And so Senator Terry Rice, on Friday, there's going to be a legislative council meeting, and they're going to debate, I think, whether or not to allow this $1 million transfer to go at the governor's request to this new conservation fund for the Buffalo River area. Quote, Terry Rice, quoted in the paper with Michael Wickline article, just being cautious about young people in agriculture and how they're worried that after what was done to C&H hog farms, quote, we have a lot of young people that are concerned about their future. Young agricultural people that are concerned about their future, that they may become litigants in their livelihood simply doing what they know is the best practices. This legislator agreed to, and I supported, a buyout of a private business that had no violations, C&H Hog Farm, that technically had not done anything wrong. It raised a lot of concerns with a lot of people. Rice then asked the state budget administrator, Jake Bleed, to elaborate on the funding request. Quote, this is an opportunity, we hope, for folks in the watershed to take advantage of the funding, which has been requested today, to get ahead of some potential issues that might cause a water quality problem later on down the road. The intent of the program is not to create litigation. It's not to create regulations. It's not to impose anything on anybody. Okay, so I want to be clear here. In the first hour, I said that, it kind of sounds like a lot of this will be towards regulations. They're saying this is not for regulations. So I want to make that point. They're saying that this is not for regulations. It'll be interesting to see what happens on Friday. Journalism at this point is really on full display, so I'm really glad that I had you on today. Yesterday, James O'Keefe's videos about CNN came out, and so that's clearly, they're not objective. They're cloaking themselves in objectivity, but it's fake. But then you had, I don't know if you saw this, the ABC report about the bombing of a Syrian border town where they used footage, cropped the video, and it was actually from Knob Creek in West Point, Kentucky, from 2017, where they were, doing basically a gun show, an artillery show, and they tried to use that to attack the president. I mean, and that's not an oversight. That's not an accident. That was deliberate.
Well, yes. What bothers me about the CNN stuff coming out is the notion that the CNN is trying to appear objective. It's false objectivity. It's one thing if you're a conservative and you're going to say, okay, I'm a conservative. Here's my conservative opinion. There's nothing wrong with that because, number one, it's opinion and you're calling it opinion. And number two, you're telling people who you are. But that's not what happens in these mainstream media outlets. They pose as people who are objective. They pose as if they're just giving you the facts. So, we're just giving you the facts. It's proven that Biden did nothing wrong in Ukraine. That's just one example. But it's proven, and they present that to you as proven objective fact, and it is not. And that's where the real problem lay. And if these outlets put out the facts, and then when there's an opinion piece, they come out with their progressive opinions, fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's not what's happening, and that's where I think our democracy is being torn apart. It's really disguised, and what they're doing is they're getting everybody worked up. Here's my analogy, Joe. If I go to court every day, and there are 1 or 5 or 4 other lawyers that are there to call me on every misstatement I make, or if I make an omission, they let me know. There's a judge that doesn't let me state as fact that which is opinion. I have to put on an expert with opinion, but I can't, with a regular witness, come up with opinions. I'm hemmed in that way. But if I were able to go into court alone with no judge and just a jury, and I could do what the media does, the temptation is to just tell one side of things. And that's what we've got now. That's what we've got since 1972, since Watergate. We've got a media that says, gee, I'm going to go in and talk to the jury without anybody correcting me. And I know that none of my mainstream cohorts
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. Microphone's on my right side now. So that means we got a guest in studio. I want to introduce you again to Iris Stevens. She's a coordinator with the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party. Iris, how are you this morning?
I'm just fine. You might want to add that she's the local troublemaker, apparently.
The local troublemaker is here in studio. So we're talking once again about Northeast Arkansas, talking about Jonesboro. The public library, taxpayer funded. They bring in an author, and it's a controversial author.
It's a transgender woman, or a trans woman author, Meredith Russo. And when we got the notification that was going to be one of the guests, I didn't think too much about it until I started reading. And I found out that the library then, the schools were going to bus in over 300 14 and 15-year-olds, 9th and 10th graders, to see this author.
And that is the uproar that it caused, really.
That's the uproar.
I don't really think
we have always said the author has every right, the library has every right to bring in any author that they want to. Mm-hmm. Our problem was busing this grade level student in to see this because students of that, and I taught students of that age for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And they're very impressionable, and this basically gives an endorsement or a imprimatur of that situation, the trans situation.
Yeah, like a field trip. Like I remember when field trips used to be like, hey, we're going to go shadow this person who's a titan in industry, or go to the nature center. We're going to learn about biology, and it's like, no,
Well,
we're going to
people-
learn about sexuality and transgenderism.
Yes, because his main character in the book that they're going to discuss is transgender.
Mm-hmm.
And the students were all given this book to read before they go to the author. Now, when we attended the library meeting the other night, the library director admitted that they're paying for the author, that's taxpayer funds, but Library Association chose 20 books for lower level students, 20 books for upper level students, and this was one of the books that they chose for the students to read and then vote on which author they wanted to come. This has been directed by adults, and that's a real problem for us too.
Okay, so first off, well, let's talk about transgenderism. This was
okay.
in and of itself.
Transgenderism, yes, and you can't use that language because we're in a flux now with language. You can't use transgenderism; that's negative. So you have to use trans woman. There's a whole list of things, words that they accuse you of being bigoted about if you even use, and we've gotten accused.
Well,
of
pretty
that
sure.
before.
I mean, so at some point we're not even going to be able to use the word.
Yeah,
they'll start comparing
can't.
it to the N word.
Exactly. But anyway, that condition is where people have a disorder. Well, you're not even allowed to call it a disorder anymore, but they see themselves as a different sex than what they were born.
This used to be considered a psychological problem.
Yes, it was.
Though,
and they
right?
tried to purge, just like they purged homosexuality out of the DSM. They're purging this out, even though it's very similar, because we all know that our sex is coded genetically at the moment of conception. You are either XX or XY, except in an extremely tiny fraction of cases,
right.
That something happens wrong. But other than that, you are XX and XY. There's nothing you can do to change that.
Right. And for those exceptions, by the way, we still have a level of what we consider to be normal because,
yes.
if
98.9% people are born XX or XY.
If you were to take that with like physical, like if I were born with...
The physical attributes is different.
Yeah.
That happens more frequently where you have genitalia that you can't always tell whether it's male or female.
Yeah.
That's not the same as having a genetic
Correct.
anomaly.
Correct.
Right.
Now, my point is that if somebody were born, let's say, with unfortunate, like not having an arm, we don't then say, this is now,
a different species.
normal or whatever. We know that a human being is supposed to have 5 fingers and 5 toes.
Exactly. And what they do is in the past, before genetic studies were available, what they would try to do was take what they had to work with that child and go from there and make it appear to be male or female. And sometimes that worked and sometimes it didn't. Sometimes because they didn't know the genetic, they didn't know whether it was an XX or XY. Right. That person had problems. But we did the best that we could. This is a totally different situation. These people see themselves. It is called gender dysphoria. It used to be called gender identity disorder, and see that, that was a negative name.
Right.
And it creates a real problem then because, they see themselves as something different. I have analogized it to someone with anorexia, which is body dysphoria, where they look into a mirror and they see somebody's obese. We may look at them and realize they're emaciated.
Yeah.
This is essentially the same thing. We look at a little girl or a little boy and we know what they are. They don't see themselves as that
There
way.
are extreme cases of body dysmorphia, too. People say, I should have been born with only one arm.
Exactly.
And there are people over in Europe now actually removing their arms for them.
Exactly.
They're participating in a delusion.
I'm glad you said that because that's exactly what they're doing. They're participating in the delusion. In this case, if you're an adult and you do this, God help you. But we've got children that are in this state. We have a situation in Texas right now, a 6-year-old whose his father and mother are divorced, and the mother has decided the child is transgender and is taking him to all of the psychological help and things to get him set up to be transgender so that when he begins puberty, he can start the puberty blocking drugs, and the father's having a problem with this. Yeah. They have basically almost removed the father's rights through this situation. Right. In schools.
And to be clear, when that kind of thing is being done, that's experimentation on a child. That we have literally these physicians that are recommending this, if you want to call them physicians, this is you are experimenting on children. We have no idea.
And this is happening all over the world. In Britain, they've had 100% increase in the children or the parents, because children at that age can't seek medical help. It has to be the parents, of parents who are bringing kids to the doctor and say, my child is transgender and he needs to. And so in Britain, they've kind of backed off and said, no, especially before puberty, we do not even need to thinking about that. We need to look at counseling. You know, the suggested recommendation from some psychiatrists is to go through at least 2 years of counseling with an adult before you ever even start thinking about gender reassignment.
Right.
And they know, they have done studies, and you know, this has been blasted today on the paper, but the comment, you know, from one of the people in the paper today is that we misrepresented a study. No, because I take the documents as they are.
Mm-hmm. So what are you talking about? I've got this. Are you talking about this article here?
I'm talking about the article, the column.
Okay, there's a column in the Jonesboro Sun today about this controversy.
And they accuse, and it may be one of the letters too that accuses the Swedish study that we have taken and manipulated. We didn't. I worked with the actual study itself. And let me read you the conclusion of the study.
Yeah, okay.
It says, this was the conclusion of this, and it was the longest study ever done of transgender. And of course, Sweden is extremely accepting of basically any lifestyle. You know, they're very open and over there. So it's not like the people, they'd say, well, that people suffer from discrimination here. And yeah, probably they do. It's not like that in Sweden. But this, after this study was done, this was their conclusion. This study found substantially higher rates of overall mortality, death from cardiovascular disease, and suicide attempts, and psychiatric hospitalizations in sex reassigned transsexual individuals compared to a healthy control population. This highlights that post-surgical transsexuals are at a risk group that need long-term psychiatric and somatic follow-up. Even though surgery and hormonal therapy alleviates gender dysphoria, it is apparently not sufficient to remedy the high rates of morbidity and mortality found among transsexual persons. Mm-hmm. Improved care for the transsexual group after the sex reassignment should therefore be considered, because the problem with body dysmorphia is the underlying trauma. There's an underlying trauma there, except in the cases of kids who, you know, kids play opposite sex all the time. Yeah. That's just what, you know, as you play, you that's part of your growing process. Yeah. But with these, they have an underlying trauma that apparently has caused a lot of this. And the surgical transition does not fix the underlying
depression.
Problems.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and they say, and the left says, that the reason the suicide rates are so high in that community is because of the discrimination.
Well, that's why I pulled out the Swedish study, because that just
I agree. No.
Destroys that concept. Yes, they do suffer, you know, in some places, in some cases, but that's not the underlying cause.
So I want to articulate the argument. We're talking with Ira Stevens, Northeast Arkansas Tea Party. You had a taxpayer-funded library, brings in this guest author. That's not the issue that the guest author's, transgender.
No, he can come and visit. And
freedom
parents,
of speech,
and if parents all over
whatever.
Jonesboro want to drag their kids in there of the evening,
their right to
or
do
during
so.
the day, you know, if they want to do that, that's fine. What we did not want was the schools busing these children in,
because that's taxpayer dollars.
It's not only that, but it gives the impression that this is a wonderful thing to look at. This is a wonderful thing to do, and I've taught this grade level of students for too many years not to know what that looks like to the students. And if the schools bus us over there, that means this is a good idea, and that this is a positive.
Yeah, and then you have your taxpayer dollars that are going.
That's exactly the case.
To facilitate the minors. We're talking about minor children.
Yes.
Okay, in the care of our school
Adults.
systems, and those school systems are ultimately controlled by us, the people, and so.
And this goes even farther, because now, if you'll look in the prisons, in some places, the government has mandated in prisons that people who want to go through gender reassignment are paid for. That surgery is paid for tax dollars.
I've seen that.
A few years ago, the health care was changed so that it was mandated that we pay for sexual reassignment. That's tax dollars. All of this is being generated by tax dollars, but for me, that's not the primary issue, the tax dollars. But it is, and people need to be aware of all of this, all the ramifications of this.
This is an example, I think, of, just how much, I feel like in a lot of ways, the media and the persistence of small and vocal minorities really that
drive the agenda for a lot of things.
And because what you're talking about, we're talking about studies and facts, and we're just saying, listen, they've changed the language on us in terms of what used to be considered, something that was not normal.
A disorder.
It's a disorder is now normalized. And here in the middle of the Bible Belt, small town Arkansas, that those, and this is what's so interesting, when I have a whole parody on this about defining your own reality. So
exactly, that's what these people are doing.
Exactly, and we as a library, as a town, as a taxpayers, we're now starting. Obviously, we would think this would be happening somewhere else, bigger city, something like this. But now we are also starting to participate
to face the reality
and saying,
of what's going on around the world.
Yeah, you defining your own reality. Yeah, and this has nothing to do with how you would treat somebody who is transgender personally.
Because frankly, I go by the golden rule: treat other people the way that you would like to be treated. And I have actually, in my education experience later on, dealt with a transgender individual, and I felt very sorry for that person because they were extremely confused. So there is no animosity here, but there is very much for me a caution. Let's not go down this road because when you have a suicide rate from this Swedish study that's 20 times more than normal, because the transition does not cure the underlying disorder. And when you have an American pediatric study, you have a study done by a group of lesbian and gays that showed this suicide. Of course, those studies claimed that it was because of bigotry and prejudice. They don't look at the underlying disorder that causes the desire to be out of your own body, to change your own body. Yes, that is a concern to me. If you save one child from getting into a situation that could lead to this suicide, that's what's important to me.
Well, and here's the thing: if you go back to the hormone blockers with young children as young as 6 or whatever, are we going to say? I mean, I think if you polled this area right now, they'd say no, that's abuse. That is child abuse, should be criminal. Mm-hmm. But it's not in these other communities that consider themselves bastions of progressivism.
Exactly.
So at some point, it's like at some point you got to put up a flag and you got to say, we're going to have to start articulating, and we want to treat everybody with respect, but we're not going to, again,
endorse everything. Indulge people in their delusion.
Like
and
you said, XY or XX. Yes. That's what it is.
And for the vast majority of people, maybe 1-2% are anything other than that, and we have a way to, to deal with that.
Right.
But this was what made me upset, was when we see this going on in our own school system, and apparently the superintendents recognized that this might not be a good situation.
They did.
They didn't know. I don't think they knew.
They pulled out, though, right? I mean,
they pulled out. They said, we are no longer going to bus students there. They claimed it was for safety, and in a way it was because it's anyway. That's not the issue. They did. But I don't also blame the superintendents because they didn't know. They don't micromanage down the local classroom.
Correct.
This was set up between teachers, librarians, and whatnot, and it's gone on every year. The librarian made that point that they have authors come in every year. I'm not sure they've ever had one like this that they bus students to, where there was that caution, that should have been flying, big and high.
Yeah.
But so. Like I said again, we're not getting in the way of the library being able to host this person. We certainly don't want our students bussed over there.
Well, that's what the left does. The left says, hey, you can't have a conservative speak at this university or that university. That, again, and I appreciate that consistency. Y'all are saying, you know what? No, that's a thing that can happen. If people had a problem, let's say people did have a problem with that, thered be other means to go about.
As I said, the parents can bring their kids at night.
Exactly.
There's nothing keeping them from going to the library to see this author. We did not want the schools busing them in, and we're thankful that other people saw the wisdom of that and, have agreed with it. This is going on in other schools. I just pulled a report last night off of Skokie, Illinois. The school districts involving Skokie and whatever district is close to that have written up an agenda that I think, with the way it's written up, it celebrates these lifestyles, if you want to call them that, as young as kindergarten.
Yeah.
And they teach the kids each level, about the transgender. They teach them about lesbian and gay issues and all that.
That's the thing, like when you're that young, you don't even know what sex is. Like, what is the obsession with our society and sex? Well, it's like, I don't,
you and I know what that obsession is.
Yeah, I know.
But we have not made it that issue. But this I think is child abuse. Let the kids be kids before we start,
Well, and
changing
I wonder, and I don't mean to bring everything back to politics, but I just have a suspicion, if you consider yourself progressives and your parents, I bet all the people that want to give their kids, hormones as young as 6. I mean, I'm pretty sure we know how they vote.
Oh yeah.
And it'd be one thing if there was, all these conservatives that were like, no, actually the data is there. My son's really a girl. But that's not happening, So
for the most part, no, it's not there. You can't say that doesn't happen, but for the most part, no.
Yeah.
But when you start talking about hormone blockers and things, what you do is you basically chemically sterilize your children.
Yeah.
Because they never develop naturally. It's very hard to take that back, and I've done all that study. I've studied this issue for probably 15, 20 years. When it first started arising, and I thought, oh, this will never happen, and here we are.
Yeah.
And I started studying this issue.
When I was in college and I heard all of the talk about slippery slopes when it comes to same-sex marriage, I thought it was, no. What kind of slippery slope? Whatever. It is what it is. I was totally wrong about that, by the way.
A lot of people were. When you try to alert people,
Well,
I did years ago.
They thought,
and they said, no,
you just don't want people to be happy and blah, blah, blah.
They said I was crazy. This would never happen, and it has happened.
Yeah. I mean, all this, and I honestly think I think it goes all the way as well back to the, and I know I'm going to sound like a real old person or old fogey.
Yeah, I've got
or whatever.
socks older than you, Paul.
Okay, but I think the mothers back in the 50s and 60s that were like, rock and roll music's the devil. I think they were right. I'm sorry, I do. I'm just, I know I sound like somebody that's totally regressive, but I mean, I think those parents, they weren't necessarily listening to the awesome guitar riffs. They were listening to the lyrics.
I know,
and they were like, well, this doesn't make sense.
I had people tell me that rock and roll, just like you did, rock and roll's of the devil. I said, by the way, have you listened to any country music lately? I said, you don't think? I said,
that's a good point.
I said, the music is good, but I said, when you listen to the lyrics, I said, you get a whole other education.
Yeah, you really do. And so it's definitely
it's a continuum. We start here, and we're not on a slope now. We're on a total drop off.
Yeah.
Because you can do what you want to as an adult, but when you start dragging innocent children into this lifestyle and to things that can harm them later on down the road,
right?
That's the problem, and that's why I said, and people said, what business is it of CTE? Well, number one, it is tax. We're paying for it. But it's a morals issue to me in the fact that you do not do things like this to children. If they want to, once they get to be 18, 21, that's a different issue.
And this is the problem, and we can end here. Our founding fathers said that the freedom that we had, the liberty that we had, was for a moral people.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the future. This is what it looks like.
This is what's going to cause you a lot of problems because they're saying we are moral.
Right. But okay, we have rejected a moral
traditional
compass.
morality.
Yeah, we've rejected it, right? It's only meant, for church, when you're at church.
Yes.
It's not in public.
Don't bring it into the public sphere.
Well, the problem is that immorality generates exactly what we're talking about. They are victimizing these kids.
Yes.
Okay? Or whatever. Immoral people are going to do immoral things. Then the government comes in, regardless of whether, it's going to happen eventually. The government's going to come in. They're going to try to fix this, right? And then
with a heavy hand.
Right. And immoral people will always find a way to get around those laws. And then the government comes with more laws to try to fix the other. And that's why I think it was John Adams said that our freedom was meant for moral and decent people, because it was the idea that just because you have the freedom to do something, it doesn't mean that it's a good thing. And I think that's where we're headed.
And the problem
where
is
we are now, actually.
We've lost our moral bearing because people, they would be outraged if they said that we were calling them immoral. They are not moral people.
Of course
because
they
are, they consider themselves good. And I would say, they're not out doing crimes. But we've so lost our moral bearing that we no longer recognize what is truth.
Right.
And what
That's
is
the problem. Yeah, truth
propaganda,
is the problem. Yeah.
Engendered by a lot of people out there that don't necessarily have the best intentions for us or our kids.
Yeah.
And we've lost the ability to discern what that is.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think for us to be able to say it is wrong and immoral to do this to a 6-year-old. Yes. And there are people saying, no, you're a bigot. It's like, wait, what? I'm so and it's really the same thing with abortion.
Yeah, they think we're immoral because we disagree with this. So we are at an odds I never anticipated seeing in this country, where we are just at odds with each other and somehow cannot seem to get to a meeting ground where used to you could get a meeting ground.
Two different realities. And I will again bring us back to the initial point. it's the idea that you can create your own reality,
Right.
and it's not that it's not objective, and that we have to participate in the delusion. That's what we're fighting here. So
Exactly.
Iris Stevens, I appreciate it. Keep me posted on this, by the way.
Yeah, I might have to come in because I knew
It's gonna get
I
worse.
knew this was going to get
Yeah.
kind of ugly because people, they pass along incorrect information. They don't know what we actually did. We didn't try to shut anybody down. We said, please don't bus our kids.
Yeah. All right, that's really good, folks. Let me know what you think about this. Sound off Facebook.com/Conduit News, and we're going to be back here in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break.
Getting excited. It's really inciting mob rule. It's what the founding fathers were worried about, was mob rule. And right now, there's a good portion of the country that is trying to get us into mob rule. Think about that phony Russian investigation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing if there were good, solid witnesses there, even if they were lying, if they looked good. But you could tell right from the beginning that there were no witnesses there. That Joseph Mifsud was a Western intelligence agent. That Sergei Millian didn't know what he was talking about. That he was a joke. But that's what's happening. We're getting mob rule, and we almost got rid of a president. He was hanging on by his fingernails. If he would have, he gets upset with it, and if he got upset and did something that the mob would say was impeachable, was obstruction, he'd be out of there. And what bothers me is I'm not here to carry a brief for President Trump. I'm here against mob rule. I'm here for truth in democracy, for people giving facts to the jury of public opinion. We no longer have strong political parties where, in the past at least, the parties acted as some sort of a safeguard and so forth. We don't have those anymore. We have people we have our representatives going direct to the people. That's the more direct democracy. And the media is the megaphone that gets to those people. Thank God for shows like yours, is all I can say. Thank God.
Well,
that we don't have the fairness doctrine.
Yeah.
Thank God.
You're right. Well, John O'Connor, I really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for shedding some light on this. Appreciate your opinion. And I really, I think that this book of yours, again, Postgate out of the Washington Post, betrayed the
power,
Watergate and began today.
prestige,
I think it's so applicable to what we're going through now. Like you said, it's the beginning of it then, and now we're really kind of in the middle of it all.
available now from aristocrats serving Arkansas.
If we got rid of President Nixon
from the Nata Rhino collection.
That's my final
The
thought.
fragrance of backroom deals. Nepotism.
I think that
the aroma of higher taxes. Subliminal deception. Deep state. Ace. Made right here in Arkansas by a taxpayer-funded Chinese factory. Every bottle carefully crafted for you. Gender neutral. Nothing says aristocrat like Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa.
Available now in the Marble Palace gift shop.
Paul Harrell parody.
All right, that's all the time we have. We got 50 seconds. We really appreciate you guys listening. Thank you to Ira Stevens. Thank you to Joseph Fondren. Thank you to Gregory Wrightstone. We really appreciate it. A lot of comment on Facebook about that last segment. Let us know. Are we just a bunch of bullies, or are we speaking the truth that you agree with? or just the truth, whether you agree with it or not, folks. It's really what we're talking about. We'll be back here tomorrow. Arkansas, have a great day and be safe.